Fala galera, seja bem-vindo a mais um vídeo Dragon Game JP com vocês. E hoje para mais um vídeo de Pokémon no Mundial, que teve a final da NIAC, acho que foi, né? Que é a International Champions, que teve ali. Teve a final do Sênior, que foi disputado por um brasileiro. Isso foi no domingo, dia 15, se eu não estou enganado. Eu acabei perdendo, fiquei de fora dessa competição, né, que aconteceu nos Estados Unidos. Mas a gente tá aqui pra ver o react. Eu não sei como é que aconteceu, tá? Eu vou reagir aqui com vocês. Eu não sei, eu não peguei spoilers da partida. Apenas a gente tá meio que vendo ali atrás os times de cada um. Acredito eu que o brasileiro, que é o Isaac, é o da esquerda, né? Que tá ali com um time bem balanceado. E eu não sei de onde que é o adversário. Eu vou ficar devendo essa informação, mas vamos dar o play aqui pra
Absolutely, I can't even begin to imagine how proud you are of Apollo, but he will have to defeat Isaac. And Julio, Isaac I know has worked really hard for this. How I'd like to see Isaac grow and become the trainer who has made it to the finals.
He's a great guy, a great player. I'm so proud of him.
These are going to be two incredible trainers going up in an incredible matchup here for the title of the International Championships. Don Paul, do you have any words of advice or encouragement for Apollo?
It's going to be intense. Do your best.
Do your best, have no regrets. That's the most important thing that you can do. And Julio, the same for Isaac.
Yeah. He's more calm than me, but he will do a great fight.
Cara, olha a cara do brasileiro,
I am
mano.
so excited to see this final between these two incredible
o outro anotando
competitors. A rising
tudo e o
star and a
brasileiro.
great senior competitor over the course of the season. Let's not waste any time at all. Let's go ahead and get ready for this matchup. Take it away, casters.
Se ficar ruim ali a minha câmera,
Thank you so much, Evan. It was so great to be able to hear from the family of our competitors here on the main stage for the Seniors Division Finals at the North America International Championships. My name is Rosemary Kelly, and I'm joined by Jake Muller, and it is so exciting to be here after such an intense weekend of competition.
And a great day of competition, too. We've had so many fantastic finals matches on Championship Sunday, and it is time to crown our last champion. It will be either Isaac or Apollo, who have fought through a long competition to get here. Bunch of 2-0s here on this bracket. We got a lot of trainers dominating their way through this top cut portion.
Yeah, and it's going to be all down to this to see which of our trainers will be able to make it their big name on the stage as North America International Champion. And this is going to be our final match that we have here on the broadcast, but please stay tuned because after this, we are going to be showing off our closing ceremony that will give you a sneak peek of some things to expect at the World Championships. So before that, though, we do have this big task on our hands. Isaac Moreira versus Apollo Stevens. And I think both of these trainers, as you could hear it from their family, really excited about this opportunity. Isaac, of course, is really looking forward to this international championship as another shot to be able to take that title. But Apollo, first event ever, and has already made it to the finals. That is an incredible story.
And I loved his father being so excited about it, too. Best Father's Day ever.
For sure.
A really, really fun way to support your son and this, you know, I think especially going into your first tournament ever, you probably don't have huge expectations. You're going to go have a lot of fun, and getting all the way to the finals here just makes it such an amazing experience that they get to share together. Of course, Isaac does stand in his way. Isaac has been in one major final before, back in Joinville, but...
Tá pouquinho do histórico dos dois. Isaac ficou em top 8 em São Paulo, foi finalista aqui em Joinville. Pra quem não sabe, sou da cidade de Joinville. Foi campeão global pela quinta edição do online e top 16 em Londres. Então, Isaac tem um bom histórico já. O nosso querido Apollo é apenas a primeira competição dele da NIAC. É a primeira competição dele e já sendo finalista.
Was not able to take home the victory. He did win a global challenge online though, so he has had some very, very great success, just not yet at the in-person tournaments.
Yeah, but you can see even at the last couple of international championships, even just this season, I feel like it's just been a training arc for Isak here. A top 8 at LAIC, a top 16 at London just a couple of months ago, and now finds himself here on the cusp of being able to truly call himself an international champion. And for Apollo, I mean, what a story for this player. I believe also does get coaching from one of the top North American players in region, Joseph Ugarte. And I think as you look at this team, it is very Joseph Ugarte-pilled.
You can definitely see the whispers of Ugarte there. Jumpluff especially is one of his favorite Pokemon, and he gets to share that love with Apollo here in the seniors division. But looking at Isak's team, it is going to be that.
Aqui, ó, o que eu falei. Demonstrando todo o set para o adversário. O adversário sabe. Tipo, ele é obrigado a mostrar na competição. Então, o Carlex dele tem que levar a Life Orb. Tem que ser esse set. Tem que ser aquele Terra. Terra Gold? Não, não é Terra Gold. Terra Dark. O Corridon dele tem que ser o Terra Fogo. Então, esse é o diferencial, tá, do VGC para as outras competições. Tipo, as competições que eu digo é para quem joga o Showdown. Showdown é pego de surpresa. No competitivo de Pokémon ali, no VGC, você não é pego de surpresa. Você sabe, você pode marcar, você pode analisar ali quais são os teros. Você vai saber que por exemplo ali, que o Shiyu do Isaac, ele é Choice Scarf. Você sabe que o Tatsurugi dele é Fox Slash, entendeu? Então, com isso você não é pego de surpresa.
Calyrex, Shadow Rider and Corridon combination, but with the Dozogiri.
Também dá pra gente ver que as habilidades, né? Using Neutralizing Gas. Não uso Unaware, não tem outra melhor para ele mesmo. Commander de Tatsurugi, a habilidade do Corridon, né? Tacação em campo. O Shio também. Só mesmo interessante seria ali o Galarian. Weezing, só, né? E o Dondozo podia ser alguma habilidade mais.
Tatsukiri, the Rupee form, and Dondozo looking to combine for some very, very big damage and a lot of stat boost. Next to it, also the Galarian Weezing, which looks to shut off abilities, and that Choice Scarf Chiyu.
And that's where this ability shield on the Corridon becomes really important, because ideally this Corridon is still going to be able to take advantage of its Orichalcum Pulse and also still be able to give the Sun over to this Chiyu to boost up those fire type attacks. And when you take a look at the rest of this team, I feel like you just have so much longevity. You look at that Tatsugiri and this Dondozo is just one of those ways that you can really make sure you're staying around on the field for a
Generation Overheat, Heat Wave is now. Claro, Easy Protect, Strong Steam, que bate nos dois, Poison Gas, Toxic Spikes, para punir possíveis trocas, Circuit Protect, Dragon Meteor, Water para tentar baixar a accuracy, Ice Wind para poder baixar a speed, e o Dondozo de Protect Hit Crash, que bate muito forte, Bar Press e Earthquake, que bate em ambos
long time, and I think that's something that will be very beneficial versus the offensive pieces that Apollo has on his particular team.
The Koraidon's moveset is also interesting. Dragon Claw is not something we see too often. Usually it is a flame charge in that set like we saw in our juniors finals, but that Dragon Claw could come in very handy because there is another Koraidon on Apollo's team. You get to see the possibility for that Dragon Claw being able to hit Koraidon for super effective damage.
Yeah.
Aqui a gente tá com o time do Apollo, de Lunala, Shadow Sheet, Web, ok, Meteor Beam, pra combar com Power Web, Gator Beam, Triple Room, One Guard, pra proteger o Pokémon de levar ataques de área. O Coraidon de Fire Blade, Altera Água. Coraidon Altera Fogo, Fire Blade, Explosive Combat, Flame Charge e Protect. Incineroar, Intimidate, Safety Goggles, ok. Ele fica imune a golpes Spore. Spore. Ele fica imune a Spore, como é que é agora os golpes de tipo Grass. Ele até era Ghost, né? Aqueles golpes de planta, tipo, pó que dá sono, pó paralise, eu esqueci o nome, não é possível, meu parceiro. Não é possível isso que tá acontecendo comigo aqui. Enfim, ele fica imune a esses tipos de golpe e também Rage Power. Acho que é Poison, Power. Esqueci. Power Sleep. Power Sleep. Ele fica imune. Agora esqueci os outros golpes, mas enfim. Ele que tá trazendo Fake Out, Fraud Blitz, Knock Off, U-Turn, Dito de Imposter, Focus Sash, Terra Normal, trazendo só Transform, mas se tiver o Isengazular ali, complicou pra ele. Jumpluff, Chlorophyll também pode ser um problema, assim como Ursaluna também. Guts não funciona se o estiver em campo, aí ele perde realmente metade do ataque. Orb de Cover Cloak, eu realmente não sei qual que é esse ataque. Sleep Powder, Deep Storm, The Wind e o Turn. E o Ursaluna tá trazendo Side, Raid Long Rush, Earthquake e Protect, ok.
Yeah, pick your ghost type. You do have this Lunala as the partner of choice for this Koraidon, and you can already see the difference in movesets between those two Pokemon in particular. But one of the coolest things about this team, I think, just has to be the combination of the Koraidon alongside this Jumpluff with the Chlorophyll ability. You're able to really take advantage of the stun this Koraidon is going to set. And if 2 restrictions aren't enough for you, you've got a Ditto. You could have a 3rd.
Exactly. It's going to be interesting, though, because Weezing will be able to swap it at any moment and possibly shut off that Chlorophyll. So even if the sun is up, that speed boost might not be.
And let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? The seniors finals of the 2025 North America International Championships. And it all starts here for Apollo, this jump up and this Incineroar. And Isak is going to set the sun for it with the Koraidon next to that Weezing.
Again, Weezing, though, with that neutralizing gas ability, does not allow any other Pokemon to activate their abilities. The ability Shield item on Koraidon does give it an exception, though.
Yeah, but that's why you didn't see that Incineroar actually drop its attack stat. So this Koraidon is still going to be able to dish out all of the damage it's meant to. Jumpluff gets a chance to set the tailwind, though, for Apollo's team. As you see the toxic spikes now get laid out on the field. One of the best parts about Weezing, of course, is going to be able to give you the poison damage once those Pokemon switch in onto those spikes.
Really important tailwind, too, because now Jumpluff does remain the fastest Pokemon on the field and can go for these crucial sleep powders.
Sleep powder into the Koraidon. It's not going to be able to move on this turn. It does have to take that mandatory turn of sleep, which it will do just in this moment. But this Weezing still gets a chance to do something. U-turn from the Incineroar is going to allow Apollo to also make sure that you can pivot on this Incineroar, maybe actually make use of its Intimidate ability later. But more critically, you have a Pokemon that can come in under these tailwind conditions now. But there's a drawback to that. There are toxic spikes that have been set up on the field. So this Lunala, unfortunately, has to switch in, take that poison, and that poison damage at the end of this turn is going to break that Shadow Shield.
I think that's a trade you're probably willing to take, right? The Shadow Shield essentially gets broken by the neutralizing gas anyway, so you probably recognize there's not a turn in this game where I'm going to be able to make use of that Shadow Shield. So now you bring it in, you're letting it get poisoned, but that was clearly going to happen anyway, thanks to this poison gas coming out from Weezing, able to poison this flying type Jumpluff as well. Now that Koraidon has taken his mandatory turn of sleep, it may be able to wake up this turn, but if it doesn't, you gotta face down this Lunala now too.
The good thing, though, I think, for Isak is that he does have a couple of turns. The Koraidon isn't under threat right now, I think, of being one-hit knocked out, unless it does take something from this Lunala like Moonblast, but this particular Lunala doesn't have that. So that's not something that you're super worried about. You don't have to expend your Terra either because you just don't need to deal with that move. This Jumpluff, though, is going to take a reprieve as Incineroar comes back out. Now it's going to be poisoned as well.
Poison spikes will be very effective here. Meteor Beam is the attack of choice from Lunala, opting to boost its special attack by one stage, and then use the Power Herb item to make sure that this attack goes off in one turn instead of having to charge up.
And Power Beam is going to land into the Weezing. It still does a pretty significant amount of damage, but the Weezing holds on into a comfortable enough HP range that this Citrus Fairy is going to allow it to recover a lot.
Koraidon does stay asleep, though, unfortunately, for Isak. So now there's an even greater chance for waking up next turn. But this Incineroar coming in, you have the ability to fake it out once again and prevent it from attacking even further. A great use of these pivot options from Apollo just to make sure that you're always in control. That first tailwind on the beginning of the game will be running out after this coming turn, though. So you have to wonder, if you want to get that Jumpluff back in, you're going to have to find a way to get it another free turn because its Chlorophyll remains shut off by Weezing.
I do kind of wonder, then, if you want to go for the U-turn on the Incineroar instead. That way you are making sure that those turns do line up with the end of this tailwind. You do have the Jumpluff to come back in and set it up on the next turn.
There's also the option for a Trick Room on Lunala here if you want to kind of flip that speed. As tailwind ends, Trick Room goes up, then Lunala can attack first again.
We do have a Terrestrialization, and what a great time to use it. This Lunala did get that +1 special attack with that Meteor Beam usage on the turn before, and being able to have this Water Terra is going to help you resist some of these Fire-type attacks, but Koraidon isn't going to go for that for now. Wakes up, goes for the Protect, just to make sure you've bought yourself another turn. And a double Protect here, making sure you're not going to take a Fake Out.
Wanting to stall out this final turn of Tailwind, and there is no Trick Room from this Lunala, so a little bit Gambit there from Isak that does end up paying off. Now your Koraidon will be able to attack next turn, and it will be in the fastest thing on the field.
But you can see what Apollo was hoping for. The U-turn from the Incineroar would have given that free switch to the Jumpluff like we talked about before, but now you don't have that. So it will be the Koraidon that can move and hopefully knock something out here. You have that close combat, and unfortunately now that Lunala is terrestrialized, it's no longer a ghost type. It will be hit by that move.
You do leave yourself more vulnerable to a pretty safe attack here. If Terrestrialization was still on the table, Isak may have been forced to go for a Flare Blitz into that Lunala, which could have been mitigated by a Terra Water, but now there is no more Terra Water, or there's no more ability to Terra because it's already a Water type.
Yeah, and the double protect is unfortunately going to fail on the Weezing as well, but that's where this Terrestrialization comes back to haunt this Lunala close combat. Gonna be good enough for the first knockout in this game. So we will have to see where the turn goes from here. This Incineroar still gets a chance to move, and it will finally land the U-turn. It would have liked to on the turn prior.
The Weezing protect there. Maybe could have gotten a little bit more done. Possibly another Strange Steam for a little bit of chip damage. But the double protect, possibly hedging your bets that close combat may have just barely missed a KO on Lunala, and you really don't want to be losing that Weezing if you can help it. Having the ability to control when abilities are and are not active is the main reason why you want to be using this Weezing, and preserving it is really the best thing you can do. It doesn't necessarily need to be attacking, it just needs to exist.
Ooh, but look at this. The fourth and final Pokemon for Apollo has been revealed. We've got this Koraidon now that's going to stare its counterpart in the face. And unfortunately, this one does not have that ability shield, so no Orichalcum Pulse it can draw upon to actually really take advantage of. As Apollo also has to think pretty hard about what's going to be coming in next to that Koraidon.
I believe the sun just ended as well, so Isak's Koraidon also does not have that Orichalcum Pulse attack boost, but it doesn't have an Intimidate attack drop because, again, this Weezing is blocking that Incineroar's ability to use its ability. If the Weezing does swap out, abilities immediately do reactivate, so then the Sun and Intimidate would go off, but looks like that's not going to happen just yet.
No, this Koraidon is going to go back into its Pokeball for a little bit later as the Jumpluff now comes out in its place. One of the lead Pokemon for Apollo in this game number 1, and very critical to be able to get something like that Tailwind speed up for later, and it's able to come in scot-free. The threat of that Fake Out was enough for Isak to go for a Protect on both this Koraidon and the Weezing, and so Jumpluff just takes a little bit of that poison damage for all of its troubles.
And this Jumpluff is not carrying Protect. It has the Attack, Leaf Storm, and then 3 supportive moves in Sleep Powder, Tailwind, and Rage Powder. So if Isak wants to target this Jumpluff with his Koraidon, if it is trained to be a little bit faster, of course Jumpluff isn't necessarily faster than Koraidon normally, but depending on training, might have been a little bit of a risky speed interaction there.
Another pivot though, so Apollo really doesn't want to make use of this Jumpluff quite yet, and this Koraidon is going to come in to have to tank this Flare Blitz instead, and so what a great defensive pivot for Apollo to have made on that turn. But Koraidon for Isak is still getting away with a lot, and this Weezing is around for yet another turn. Gets burned, but not a huge deal since this Galarian Weezing really relies more on its special attack rather than that physical output. And with a Strange Steam, it was good to take the Flare Blitz, but will fall to the Strange Steam, and Apollo now down to the Jumpluff and the Incineroar.
What a fantastic play from Isaac there, knowing that either you get to Flare Blitz the Jumpluff for a knockout, or you get to Strange Steam the Koraidon for a knockout when it swaps in. Now I feel that this Jumpluff is not going to be too long for this world, as it no longer has the option to swap out. Again, it does not have Protect. Based on the Jumpluff swapping out there, it's probably reasonable to assume Apollo thinks the Jumpluff will in fact be slower than the Koraidon, and if that's the case, one Flare Blitz will leave Apollo with just a very, very unhealthy Incineroar.
And you already have been able to save this Terrestrialization as well, so this Koraidon can make sure it's going to be taking even less from something like a Flare Blitz from Apollo's own Incineroar, and you will not be taking as much from this Jumpluff either. I believe the attack of choice here is that Leaf Storm. So it comes down to this, I think, for Isak to seal up this game number 1.
Koraidon, if it gets a chance to attack first, will take another KO with this Flare Blitz. And Incineroar is a very, very good Pokemon, just unfortunately not good enough to 1v4. We haven't even seen Isaac's 2 back Pokemon yet. This Weezing and Koraidon have put in so much work.
That's the power duo right there for Isak's team. But now let's see this Terrestrialization and how much this Koraidon can get done with this extra bit of damage on top for these Flare Blitzes.
Just for good measure, going for this Fire-type Terrestrialization. I do think Flare Blitz would have been more than enough off the bat, but let's just make sure, right?
Yes, and that's why we see Isak still playing it safe. Doesn't want to actually have too many issues if you open yourself to something like at critical hit. So this Weezing does keep itself protected. And that's going to help make sure that this ability is going to stay on the field. Jumpluff is unfortunately going to get knocked down here with the Rage Powder redirecting that Flare Blitz. And so Justice and Incineroar left in this game number 1 for Apollo.
It's a really smart protection from the Weezing there too. If it is able to survive burn damage from this turn, that guarantees that Isaac won't have to reveal either of his back two Pokemon, which is a huge bit of information you get to conceal from Apollo. I think it's going to be able to survive. It sure is. So now this Incineroar does not have a way to protect. I guess even if it did, it just gets knocked out by poison. So Isaac has successfully withheld some really important information from Apollo here. He takes a massive 4-0 victory in this first game with the two Pokemon he started the game with. You know what for Apollo brought. You know the strategies he was trying to go for. Isaac had to reveal so little, which is going to be a big boost for him going into game 2.
Well, especially because when you take a look at the composition of Isak's team, it's pretty likely that you look at that and go, oh, Dondozo Tatsugiri makes a lot of sense as a duo you can bring for a game, as well as looking at the Chiyu and the Calyrex Shadow Rider that get paired really nicely together with the combination of Beads of Ruin and the special attack output of that Calyrex.
I think given that the poison, the Weezing went straight for the Toxic Spikes on the first turn of this game, it's somewhat reasonable to assume if you were Apollo that the Dondozo and Tatsugiri were the final two Pokemon, because they make very good use of Toxic Spikes. They are very, very bulky, very, very hard to take down, and so if you're able to set up Toxic Spikes and maybe whittle away at some of the opponent's Pokemon later on, you can just kind of outbulk them at the very end. But we'll never know. Apollo will unfortunately never know what those last two Pokemon are. It could have been any combination of those four, but Isak has a huge, huge advantage going into game number 2 on top of just the 1-0 lead.
Yeah, I mean, right out the gates here, this poor Lunala terrestrializes away from its immunity to those fighting type attacks and gets knocked out by this close combat from the Koraidon. And despite the fact you actually took the drop to your defense and special defense, there just wasn't enough damage on the side of Apollo's team to really whittle through this big threat. And with that ability shield as well, this Koraidon was always going to be well set up for success next to that Weezing.
We didn't even get to see the speed interaction between the Koraidon and Jumpluff, if I'm not mistaken. The only turn where they were both on the field without a Tailwind being set up was the Rage Powder, which is priority. So we don't even know if this Jumpluff maybe has the chance to put Koraidon to sleep before it has to set up a Tailwind, which might have been useful information here. Maybe something we have to learn on the fly in the second game.
Yeah, well, it went for the Tailwind at the very beginning of that first game. And I don't remember if the Koraidon went for the Protect, but I do think that the... It was flinched
by Fake Out, but I didn't notice if it was first or second. That's a great point.
No, I think, there's been a lot going on today, but I think you're right. I think the Koraidon did get flinched and then the Jumpluff move, but yeah, you're right.
That's what I would expect, right?
We'll just really keep our eyes on it in the second game. There you go.
I think that's the more likely outcome, is that the Koraidon is going to be faster than Jumpluff, but again, it's just these very little things that trainers have to be aware of when they're building their teams, when they're playing these games. You know, I think if Isak and Apollo were paying close attention, I'm sure they know at this point if the Koraidon or that Jumpluff is faster, but it's going to be interesting. Do we see the Jumpluff come back? The Tailwind was important, but didn't do enough.
Well, it is going to be back out on the field as it sits next to that Lunala. The same leads from this game number 1 being run back for both of our trainers. Apollo, though, really needs to win this game to keep himself in this series, and with the hope of winning his first ever international championship, but his first tournament. But Isak has such a good position here, as we saw the Koraidon and Weezing have very little trouble with this duo from game 1.
And again, two Pokemon on Apollo's side of the field, very reliant on their abilities. Chlorophyll for the speed boost on Jumpluff, and Shadow Shield for the damage mitigation on Lunala, neither of which are active. A full power Flare Blitz could be sent that Lunala's way.
And at least, yeah, I mean, you're able to hopefully help out here with something like this Incineroar to tank it if it was the Jumpluff on the receiving end of something like that, but it is tough. Isak is going to go ahead and put his foot on the gas. This Fire Terra type Koraidon now is really going to have all the power in the world behind it.
Another terrestrialization, though. Apollo wants to join the fun. It's got to be that Lunala terrestrializing back into a water type, making sure that if Flare Blitz is coming that Lunala's way, it will be doing not very effective damage.
But as we saw in that game number 1, the Water Terra did come back as a negative for that close combat. But since it is the Flare Blitz this time around, both this Lunala as well as this Incineroar will be able to take that dust a little bit better. But that's still a lot in the sun, despite the fact that it was a resist. Meteor Beam now from the Lunala. Lunala in front of this would be so good if you catch this Fire Terra. You got the Meteor Beam to be able to boost that up right away with the power, and it is going to land, but it's into the Weezing.
Crítico, mano!
The Weezing is finally out and knocked out for this match,
Mano
and
do
that's
céu,
gonna give
isso pode ter
Apollo an
custado
opening.
That might even be
muito,
better than
velho.
Nador's Intimidate goes off. Lunala is still at full HP. Shadow Shield is back on the table. And we do see that Dondozo and Tatsugiri are Isak's final Pokemon. But now that the Jump Bluff is going to be able to use its chlorophyll ability as well, you can put it to sleep. You can go for these Leaf Storms, which will be really helpful in getting some really strong Grass-type damage into Dondozo's weaker special defense.
Dondozo's going to go for the Protect, and I think that is one of those things that you have to think about when there's a Dondozo and a Tatsugiri combo. Do you want to try to target Dondozo? Do you want to try to target the partner? Because if that becomes the Tatsugiri, you will not be able to land it. But Apollo sees through the Protect, is able to go for this Moongeist Beam into the Koraidon. It's just another knockout. And now Isak down to his final 2 Pokemon. This Dondozo is going to be left all on its lonesome with this partner.
What a swing in momentum for Apollo here. A massive last couple of turns that have allowed him to take control of this game. Instead of Isak being up 4 Pokemon to 2, it's now Apollo's turn. And of course, the Tatsugiri hitting the field, it will activate that Commander ability and jump inside that Dondozo. So it can no longer act itself, but it will boost all of Dondozo's stats by 2 stages each. Speed, attack, defense, special defense, and less importantly, special attack.
Yeah, I mean, that's really where the power of this Dondozo-Tatsugiri combo comes from, though, as you are going to make this Dondozo the big Don. It's in the name here, and hopefully the big boss, but wow, look at that.
I mean, I think the outcome of this game was already pretty much decided at this point. It would have been very, very difficult for Isak to come back here. And maybe, again, trying to conceal some information. Maybe you want to hide how much damage some of your attacks do. Thinking ahead to game number 3, maybe I do have to bring this Dondozo again and don't want to reveal speed interactions. So I think it's another kind of smart use of your information here. Just unfortunately, not a use of it that can propel you to a win in that second game.
Well, it really comes down to the fact that this Meteor Beam was able to get the critical hit into the Weezing. It was not enough for the KO in that first game, but it brought it down low enough.
His reaction was ours,
I
too.
know, Apollo just cannot believe it that Meteor Beam was able to do just that much. And then the special attack was able to give you enough damage to get the Moongeist Beam KO onto the Koraidon as well. So, wow, both of our trainers, we're going to a game number 3, one game of win apiece.
I do think focusing on that Weezing was a really smart decision from Apollo. Of course, the critical hit made it even better, but the Weezing turning off all of your abilities was really impactful in that first game. Especially next to that Koraidon, you're going to be tempted to target that restricted Pokemon, the one that's going to be dealing all the damage. But you were able to block the Poison Gas. I believe that was the move that the Weezing was going for on that turn, which would have poisoned your Pokemon and broken Shadow Shield too.
But let's go ahead and make some noise, everybody. We're in Game 3 of the Seniors Finals here at the 2025 North America International Championships. And it all comes down to this. Isak being able to make the 3rd top cut at the International Championships this year, but Apollo at his very first tournament ever are both on the cusp of winning the title. And let's go ahead and see how this Game 3 starts to unfold. Koraidon on the field for both trainers, and there's a mix-up now of this Incineroar to lead for Apollo.
I just noticed the Weezing's title was Weezing the Furious, and I would have been furious after that second game too. But now it still is back, still is shutting off abilities, no Intimidate and no Orichalcum Pulse for Apollo. Of course, the sun is still up, so Apollo's Incineroar and Koraidon will benefit from the boost of Fire-type damage.
Weezing goes for the Protect this time. I think knows that it is public enemy number 1, and Apollo can see already with the Flame Charge. No way! Goes ahead and reads into that. You are going to be getting very much damage down into the Koraidon, nor the Weezing, but the Dragon Claw in response. Unfortunately, the Flame Charge is not going to be able to give you any benefit because Isak knocks it out with the Dragon Claw.
What a play! I think Apollo noticed that Isak was going for double protects as often as possible in that first couple of games, knowing that fake out would be something that can disrupt your plans. So if Isak did go for a double protect there, this flame charge into Incineroar means that his Koraidon would be attacking first. I believe that was also a side U-turn from the Incineroar that would have enabled it to pivot out. Unfortunately, Isak read right through that and takes a huge advantage in Game 3.
And now this Incineroar is just going to have to make this manual switch. Jump Bluff coming out in his place, and so we now know all 4 Pokemon that Apollo brought to this game at number 3. And we see the Terrestrialization get let loose once again onto this Lunala, the investment into the Water Terra, but Isak was able to sniff this out once before.
Yeah, he was. Not going to be caught this time. It is a close combat coming through, but the Jump Bluff this time will be the target, taking not very effective damage.
but it's still going to bring this jump fluff to below half HP. And so this Lunala needs to pick up the pieces after this Koraidon. You've got the Meteor Beam, we've seen the Power Herb activate, but let's see if this Meteor Beam can actually land its mark, and there it goes! Meteor Beam into the Weezing. It is not going to be this critical hit this time around, so the Weezing is able to stick on for this Citrus Berry recovery too.
Now the jump left again locked on the field without the use of its chlorophyll ability. Poison gas will come through and connect with both. No, not both targets. Lunala does dodge. Very fortunate for Apollo there. And now will not be poisoned and start taking that chip damage. And I believe still at full HP. So if the Weezing is knocked out, that will be Shadow Shield still active. I do like the jump off swap there. It gives you the chance to go for something like the Rage Powder, protect that Lunala even further for this turn, and possibly take a knockout on Weezing again.
Yeah, but I think as well you need to start to consider the speed, and it is going to be the Koraidon that moves first. Jump Left is not going to be able to move this time around, but this Koraidon is becoming more and more vulnerable with every single close combat that it goes for. It's taken multiple defense and special defense drops, and with this extra special attack on this Lunala, looks like this Koraidon is going to be a nice juicy target. One hit knockout here, and that's going to help to start to even the score here as Apollo keeps himself in this. Lunala and Incineroar versus Isak's 3 final Pokemon. Poison Gas hits this time around though.
It will poison Lunala on the second try, which means that even when Weezing does go down, the residual damage from poison will disactivate that Shadow Shield. Full damage will be coming through into that Lunala, and again, it is the Dondozo and Tatsugiri. We're now in a position that Dondozo loves to be in. Apollo's down to his last 2 Pokemon, especially considering this Lunala is poisoned. You're going to be able to maybe stall out some turns with Protect. Use that leftovers to get some recovery when you do take damage. Ignore the special attack boost from the Meteor Beam thanks to that unaware ability, and especially once you're able to swap in this Tatsugiri and activate Commander, it's going to be very difficult to take down Dondozo.
For Isak, it is really about that long game. As you said, the poison damage will start to stack up quite nicely over the next couple of turns. And with this double Protect, not only do you allow that to start working, but this Incineroar also cannot go for something like that fake out, but you also can't go for something like the knockoff either. You would love to be able to remove something like the leftovers, or even just help make sure that this Weezing can get out of the way. But for now, even if this Weezing does switch out and bring this Tatsugiri in, and you get rid of this neutralizing gas, this Lunala is not going to benefit from that.
Knockoff will be able to remove leftovers, which is the only way that Dondozo can recover HP. So if you are able to connect with that knockoff, you remove the leftovers, and you can start trying to whittle away as best you can. This Weezing swapping out for Tatsugiri will activate the Commander and boost the Dondozo stats once again, but notably the Intimidate does activate on Incineroar too, so attack is now only up to +1. I believe it's the Wave Crash Earthquake Body Press set, so the Earthquake may be able to hit both Pokemon for some damage here. Body Press will not be affected by that Intimidate though, because it does use that boosted defense stat.
Right, and the Body Press onto the Lunala, you would otherwise be able to survive that, but this Lunala sticks around to actually get off this Moongeist Beam, and it's going to do a nice little chunk, but with the knockoff as well. I mean, this Dondozo, it does have its leftovers removed, and it doesn't get that HP recovery, but it's still a tough road ahead.
It really is. Lunala will be a couple turns away from being knocked out. It looks like one more turn of poison will leave it very, very close to that knockout, and then a second one will do the job.
But I think you can see Isak sees the win at the end of this turn. The Body Press into the Incineroar is going to be good for the knockout and leave this Lunala as the final bastion of hope here for Apollo. Apollo is able to fire off one final Moongeist Beam with this Lunala.
Excelente dano no crítico, meu parceiro.
But I don't think that's enough. We have 2 Pokemon left for Isak. This Lunala is still another turn away from being knocked out by poison. We saw Pass for win in the TCG earlier this week, and now we're going to get Protect for win in VGC.
No way. It was a great effort, though, to keep Apollo in this game, to see that critical hit take out that Dondozo. But you're right, the Weezing hits the field, a Protect available on both Pokemon, and so we'll see this as the final moves of choice. Isak has attended 3 international championships this season, able to get top cut in both of the previous ones, and leaves this one as a champion at last. Congratulations to Isak Moreira, your 2025 North America International Champion.
Lunala finally goes down. It is official. We have a new champion here in New Orleans. What a wonderful embrace between those 2 trainers, and of course a fantastic tournament from Apollo Stevens as well. But
se não fosse os críticos,
What a great effort though by both of our trainers. Commiserations
nesse que dá uma
You made it to the finals of your first ever Pokemon
o
tournament.
brasileiro tá
Crazy.
And we've seen that happen at regionals, but to do that at an international championship too is an incredible feat.
Wow, but
Mas então é isso. Esse foi a final. BR campeão, trazendo mais um título aí. E espero que vocês tenham curtido. Se curtiram, não esquece de deixar o like para nós. Um forte abraço a todos. Valeu, falou, até a próxima, galera.
E aí? Curtiu o vídeo? Se sim, não esquece de deixar o like para mais, e se você caiu de paraquedas, se inscreve no canal, compartilha o vídeo com mais amigos e deixe nos comentários sua opinião, que nos ajuda demais. Por mais é isso, obrigado e até a próxima.